pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's study session, primarily what I wanted to do for you all is just bring you information mostly around budget issues. One of the big budget issues we have is technology. So the first place we'll start was with Mr. Benary, kind of talking about where we've been technology-wise, where we are currently, and where he sees us going in the future. So, and David has some dental work done today, so if your jaw locks up, give me a break. A little bit of break.
If you drool, is that part of it?
Mind if I just scoot up here?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
First off, thank you guys for letting me be part of this and to share with you technology and what I was asked to put on the agenda. You know, we kind of talked about what we want to look at. You know, we want to look at, you know, kind of give some of you guys, you know, a history, a little bit of history, and then kind of where we're at, and then where I see us going. So if you just bear with me, I'm just kind of shoot this at you, and then feel free to stop me, ask questions, or okay. When I started looking at the history, it's real simple in my book as far as when I took the job. I took the job in 2000, and I was challenged with the challenge of making sure that we had an infrastructure that could support whatever we wanted to do at the time. And so we sought out. It took us a couple of years to kind of get our feet going on that, but our first major purchase, and I just kind of thought back over the years, and I just wrote down kind of our major purchases for each year. Starting around 2004, we purchased our phone system, which was the voice over IP phone system. It was our first real network piece to our network. And then looking in 2005, we started looking at our security in the district, and that was a concern with the community, and so we addressed that by looking at video cameras, and that was our first implementation of putting video cameras into the network and into the schools, and they're still here today. And so the next year we also followed it up with access control, which that's when we put the doors on card swipes, and you know, we also did that. That was in 2006. Also in 2006, we upgraded our switches in the district, our core switches in the central office, and then I call them edge switches. That's things that are out in the buildings. That was the second time we had a major upgrade in our switches. The first time was actually in the year 2000 when we first took over. I was at the high school then. That was where the technology department was. But anyway, so we had a core switch upgrade, and then the switches out in our buildings in 2006. 2007 and 2008, that was when we had a change in our little change in our philosophy. We did no upgrades those 2 years in our technology, and actually my budget was cut at that time quite significantly. We were supporting recurring costs, and that's it. So we had no growth as far as new technology coming in 2007 and 2008. 2009, it was really kind of approached to me at the same way. We're not going to upgrade anything, and I'm looking around. I think you were on the board, and maybe you were. We approached you guys about thin clients because we knew that we had desktops in our district that our kids were using that were not working, and so we approached an economical way of moving forward fast, but yet still efficient in that fashion at that time in technology, and that was the year that we implemented thin clients. That was actually that ended up being something outside of our budget because we approached it later and we did it for a capital project at that time. So that was 2009. 2010 we went back into a no upgrade scenario, and so as you kind of catch a trend there were 4 years that we really didn't do much infrastructure or anything with our network, which made us really fall behind in our technology. Anytime you look at technology as a refresh rate of 4 to 6 years, depending on what you're looking at. And so, you know, some things you can push out to 6 years, and some things you can, but you don't sleep well at night. And so, you know, we were in an area there that really we're struggling with as far as my concerns about some components we had in our infrastructure. 2011, Dr. Ryan was here, and we started addressing some of those issues at that time. And Casper Center was one of the areas that really was struggling at the time, and we were actually able to leverage through the enhancement grant at that time to put new switches in that building and some infrastructure, and doing that in a fashion where they qualified for the enhancement grant, which gave us 75 cents on the dollar. So we did that pretty economically that year. 2012, we improved some of our servers that we were using. When you think about servers that we use, and you might in your business have a server that you use and those types of things to store things on, we had at the time about 23 servers in our district, and what we were able to do is reduce that to 3 and make them virtual. You've heard of VMware or virtual servers. We bought 3 servers that allowed us to put mini servers virtually onto those servers. And so today we're running about 35, 36 servers in our network, but they're all running on 3 different super servers. Those are still existing today. So that was in 2012, and they're existing today. They're running fine. But you know, another 2 years we would probably need to address looking at that type of stuff.
What are those ones?
They're around 12,000 to 15,000 a piece, depending on what size and needs you have on those. 2013, teacher computers at the secondary and elementary. We did them at 2 different phases. We did them Christmas time for the secondary, and then we did them at the end of the year. So really, 2013 was really preparing for 2014. But that was a major purchase at that time. And also, 2013, we did the switch upgrade for the core and the secondary, the high school areas, and that was done through that lease. 3 lease at the time, and it's a 4-year lease. We've got one more year payments on that, and then we're done with that lease. And then 2014 was student laptops at the high school. Obviously a major purchase there. And 2015, this current school year, we did have some Chromebooks and iPads that we purchased. A lot of that was done through the foundation. We did some minor or some small amounts. I think we bought maybe a cart of Chromebooks for McEwen. No, I'm sorry, we bought a Chromebook cart for the middle school. The middle school, the elementary, which was the foundation funds. Which brings us to now. Okay, just kind of addressing what we have right now. I mean, you know, we have the laptops at high school. So the device world is in our hands. It's something that has been very challenging from a technology perspective. You know, going into it, you never have the experience going into something. You rely on communicating to other districts and, well, how'd you do this and how'd you do that and those types of things. But all in all, from a technology standpoint, from a end user versus our support and those types of things, I think we've done a fairly good job with that. We've had a couple of meetings with some parents, pulled them in, And I've actually had some meetings with just an individual parents, having them come in and sit down, asking them how it looks out there. You know, how are they addressing them at home as far as when the kids bring them and those types of things. And it's been received well. They do have some concerns, and I'm writing them down, and that's how we grow. That's how we change. And you know, so I'm looking at how we can address those moving through the summer into the fall, and those types of things. But one of the areas that has been a concern is we do not content filter the laptops when they're off campus. Our intent was to do that. I mean, we were looking at doing that. The content filtering system that we use, which is Lightspeed Systems, they have an agent that puts on the computers and that's supposed to work, but it doesn't work. It's pretty clunky. And so I elected, instead of troubleshooting that with 925 kids on a weekly basis, you know, we don't have that right now. And so that is a concern. We've had conversations about that, and you know, I did a poll with school districts in the Kansas City area, and we're getting about 50% of them come back and say that they have content filtering. They go out off campus, and the other 50 don't. So really,
what would be the cost of that? Is that technology there?
The technology is there. I am looking at other content filter systems because I don't believe that Lightspeed is going to get there on it for it. You know, I mean, I'm still working with them on trying to get that out. But as far as the cost, I think it would be really relevant to what I'm paying right now on my recurring cost for content filtering. I think it's just that's a component that it doesn't satisfy me.
As I said, I think that's one of the biggest concerns of the parents.
I would agree.
When they take the device home, it can't be monitored to a certain degree.
I agree. And that's why
very much we need something to look at to satisfy the parents that have that concern.
Yeah.
Well, our filters are working correctly.
Yes.
Are you looking at getting a different one here as well?
I am. I'm looking at a completely different vendor to that. There's a couple of them out there that other schools are using that I'm doing demos on and those types of things that do support off-campus monitoring. And
I think that would be high priority.
Yes.
For the coming years.
Yes, I would agree.
I like to see that as a budget item.
And actually, when it comes to budget item, it won't really change my line item that I have for content filtering. I really don't believe it will. It's just more, it would change the name of our content filtering. And so Lightspeed does know that I am not pleased with that, and so we're working on it. So we've got that. Other areas, I mean, we have a lot of technology in our district, not just at the high school. And I meet with administrators in all the buildings, and you know, always kind of try to keep a feel of how they're doing and if they have any other needs and those types of things. And the elementary schools, they have Chromebooks. The middle school has Chromebooks, and then the middle school also has about 75 iPads. And
when you say they have Chromebooks, is it parts of Chromebooks?
parts,
or?
well, HES. HES has Chromebooks in the classroom. John wanted to put 3 in a classroom, and that way they kind of distribute it out and allow them to do their little, you know, pods that they rotate and those types of things. What we have found is, for instance, second grade teachers, they've gotten together and now they grab them all and they take them to their classroom and they have a full class set, and then they kind of rotate that around on their needs. And then they go back to 3 in a classroom sometimes also.
What's the difference in the cost between Chromebooks and Microsoft tablet as far as what it can do and what's its versatility within the classroom versus they can draw on it? And this and that. So what is their cost difference?
Chromebooks right now, and I'm actually looking at a new one, but the Chromebooks right now are running around $285 a device. And then, are you talking about the surface? There's many different surfaces out there. You know, if you went up to Best Buy and bought one for your consumer, you would probably see around a $399 to $499 range. Depending on what we would look at, you know, as far as our needs, as far as matching up to the network and those types of things, because those are non-networked devices there. If you put it onto the network, it's probably more around that $799 range. And
what's the life of the Chrome versus the Microsoft tablet as far as years?
I would say they were probably both 4 years. I would request them to be on a 4-year rotation.
As far as versatility, would have the best versatility within the learning atmosphere of the classroom.
I would answer that by saying I think it would be different at the elementary than it would be at the high school. Elementary, right now, just to give you a scenario, they're using Chromebooks, they're using Google Chrome, they're using the Google Drive and Docs and all of that stuff, and they're actually doing that well. I don't know if that really, I don't know if you can get into at the elementary of Google versus a Word, you know, or Office product. I think when you hit the middle school and the high school, I think that changes. And their needs change too, because their classes look different. I see an opportunity there, and I've actually heard this from our high school math department, that they would really like to see a device that would help them graph and those types of things. I could also see a benefit in that in our science, our chemistry areas, when you start charting things and those types of things, it would be to the advantage of maybe possibly having a device that you could write with. So I think you have two different scenarios there.
As you move up the ladder of schools versus elementary to McEwen to middle school, with the moving schools out. So as we move up, what's going to be the best device for those buildings in your opinion?
I think I'm perfectly happy with the Chromebooks at the 5th grade down. I think when you get to middle school, I think you could probably even go as far as 6th grade down, and then 7th and 8th grade. That's where you really start changing in the delivery and looking at those types of scenarios. So that could be a hybrid building where you might have some of this and some of that, you know.
When you said, I'm sorry, when you said that those were non-network and so it would cost more, what are you referring to?
Windows 8 is on the Surface. Windows 8 will come on that. If you buy a home computer, you've seen where it's like a Windows 7 Lite version.
So you're talking about software?
I'm talking about software. I'm talking about how it connects to us. And there's different versions of software. There's different versions of Windows.
Right.
Okay. You would have to make sure you had the professional, Windows 8 Professional, which takes a little more resources to run. But also, it'll cost a little bit more. So the price that I gave you, I mean, I haven't gone into pricing. I'm looking at this generalization of, as far as I would believe that they would be around $700 to $799. Obviously, with something. If we were looking at that, then
you can buy them directly from Microsoft.
Sure.
Or whoever makes Chromebooks, whoever was the amount you buy.
Right.
I guess
I do know the Chromebooks price is the bottom dollar price.
Sure.
But I have not investigated the surface.
They do have an education. I have checked on that.
And I guess I know there was that issue has been resolved at the high school bandwidth, and I guess that we would have plenty of bandwidth to carry it elementary.
We have the bandwidth we have right now serves our district well.
Yeah.
And you know, we trying to think of the date when we approached about the MoreNet upgrade. I can't remember, was that in May? Maybe May or June. I can't remember. But anyway, if you see the flags out here down Washington Street, the paintings and stuff. I don't know if you've driven down that and seen that, but that's actually, that's how you're doing. That's actually, KMO is the company that's putting that in. They will own the fiber. They will lease it to more network solutions with us. And that's coming soon. I mean, our target was the end of April to have that up and running, because we wanted to try to model that through our testing time to see how that went. But it won't change our bandwidth, but it'll allow us to grow. Remember, if you remember our conversation on that, because we could turn it all the way up to a gig worth of bandwidth if we wanted to. Now, obviously, we have to pay for that. So what we have done is we have set ourselves up that whether I sit in this chair or anybody else, again, that statement that I heard back in 2001, that was the infrastructure, obviously, that's what and that's what we got there. And so that's where that's at.
Do we have enough circuits?
Right?
Do we have enough circuits? I mean, you took the ones from the high school and moved those down.
Access points,
Access points, yeah.
Yes. And I'd like to I'll clarify why I moved the high school ones out. And
Well,
not
I'm just wondering, do we have enough?
Yes, we do. What we did there is when you put new technology in, certain technologies work with certain technologies. And so we bought one model of access points. And when we did that, we placed them in the same building because they talk to each other a little easier. Now you can make the other ones talk to them, but it just takes some configurations. So instead of doing that, we made it handshake. That's a term that we use a lot. We make a handshake a lot easier. The ones that we took out of the high school, then we put it in other buildings, and we matched those models up in all of the buildings. We actually have 3 different models of access points in this district right now. And our middle school has 2 different models of those 3, but we put them in floors so they match together and they talk to each other. High school, we have an access point in every classroom. We did that for a reason. We did that because we were looking at one-to-one. The middle school and the elementaries, counting early childhood center, we have one in every other classroom. And those and we did that because that would be more along the same lines as called bring your own device or class packs. Because we don't have a device in every student's hand at the same at one given time, it will support that infrastructure.
What's the life expectancy on those?
Access points are probably 6 years.
How many years should we have on the ones we moved in?
We're probably halfway. We're probably 3 years out from having to really look at maybe replacing some of the elementaries. And then obviously, 5.5 years old, the high school, 6 years.
Is there any ideas in moving any new technology in the lower buildings?
Pardon me?
Is there any new ideas in the budget to bring additional technology? And maybe I've jumped ahead of
You did.
Maybe I've jumped ahead of your presentation. Maybe I'm just.
But I'd love to address that.
I think that's important because I think everyone ought to have a piece of the pie. I think every principal should have the opportunity to bring that technology into their building.
I agree.
And for the students.
Okay, we have a plan, or I have a plan, but we have a plan, and there's a couple of things. I want to talk about elementaries, and I want to talk about infrastructure, because really, what we've done at the high school, no matter what devices up there, what we've done there, and the cash career center, and we have taken care of that infrastructure. It's solid. And but what we need to look at is how we make sure that we are continuing to grow and satisfy our needs at the elementary school and the middle school. And there's one area here at our central office that we have not addressed for 7, going on 8 years. And it's called the SAN. It's our storage server. Okay, and basically what that does is it houses all the data that we have in our network. Okay, if somebody says something, that's where it's at. Okay, it's set up where it's very redundant. So, I mean, that's why you put those in instead of just using just like a storage that you can buy, you know, anywhere. That's very redundant. So a hard drive could die, and they're written over plenty of hard drives that you can pull that one out and you still have the data, and there's no loss. And it's called Tier 1 service. And so that was actually purchased last year. Dr. White was here. So how many years? I'm trying to think how many years that was. But was it 8? So I was right, going on 8 years. But anyway, we've had conversations about replacing that, and it's at end of life. And when you hear that word in technology, that makes you, again, not sleep very well, because what that means is you're not going to get support updates on those anymore. Okay, what you got is what you got. Now, we do pay support on that, and we pay it for if something goes wrong with a hard drive on that or something like that, it's covered. They next day that, I mean, I've had 2 of them have to go down this year, where, I mean, it goes down in the day, and I make that ticket, and by 8 o'clock in the morning, it's here, and we put it in, and we go on. But that is the support that we pay for that right now, and it's about $24,000 a year, what we pay on that, just to make sure that we are guaranteed that that thing's not going to die and continue to run. Okay, it goes up about 10% a year in support just because of its age. So that's a chunk of change that we don't get back.
So how much can we save if we get a new one?
I have some preliminary numbers, and I think the numbers will get better. But I do have some preliminary numbers. To replace that sand, it would be around $138,000. Okay, there's a couple scenarios we could do with that, and the majority of the school districts in the Kansas City area, when they do infrastructure upgrades anymore, they do like we did with our high school switches and our pools. They do a 2, 3, 4 year lease, those types of things. If and I just threw this out to, you know, like I said, I haven't gone out to bid, I haven't done anything, I got quotes, I just, in generalization, talking to vendors, where would I be? And if you look at a 5-year lease with the sand, which, you know, end of life of the new sand is probably 7 to 8 years old, just like the same boat we're in now. If you looked at a 5-year lease with $138,000, you can do the math, that's going to be around $28,000 a year. Okay, like I said, I think I could probably pull a better price than that.
So does that include, if you lease it, does that include their support?
That's everything. That would be 5 years of support. I wouldn't have to pay maintenance on it. Basically,
So you're going to save.
We're going to save about what? Well, we'll actually save more money by paying a lease than we would by paying support for 5 years on your device. So that's a scenario. That's a proposal I have in my budget. We'll see that later on in life.
So it sounds like it's a pretty top priority.
I think it is. I call it the heartbeat of our network.
It's one of those things that David and I have been talking about for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's one of those pieces, the more and more that we can put off to store in the cloud, the less and less expensive that storage is for us. So we're kind of trying to find that medium on where we can't push this out any farther. And when we purchase whatever it is, it's the least that we need moving forward.
Right.
And I think we're kind of at that point where it's not going to be supported anymore, and we can't push anything else off at this time. So it's time that we do something else. But I do believe within David's budget, what we talked about, that's probably going to be able to.
I feel like I can approach that with you guys and say, I like to buy this on a 5-year lease, and I wouldn't change the line item again. I wouldn't increase money. I would just use that support money to be able to support that. You know, now saying that might be within $2,000 or $3,000. So I think that's a good look at the first look of our network.
We had on-site storage at one point. We still have it.
On-site
storage.
On-site storage went away when Google came in because we had the Google Cloud, and this is our 3rd year. And so that saved us some money right off the top. I mean, that was money that we got back and we didn't spend anywhere else. But yes, we have critical data that sits there, and we need to protect it. So that's an area that you'll be hearing more about. Phone server, you know, remember I said back in 2004 when we put our phones in, I have upgraded one of those servers, which there's 4 of them. I've upgraded one of them, which now, the technology we have now, one can actually run 2 of them. So I could actually upgrade one more server and we would have our infrastructure side of our phone system would be back to tier 1. And tier 1 is what you have to maintain that because it's also our 911 emergency response system. And so that is a critical piece. Again, I've got a general number there. It's about $18,000. That's with services and everything, putting it in. I think again, if you know me well enough, I go and get pretty aggressive, and I really feel like we can get another price than that.
Would you say that price is
Around $18,000.
With landlines leaving, is there ever a possibility?
Pardon me?
With landlines, with everybody having cell phones and landlines, and people are losing their landlines.
We actually,
What will happen in the future?
we will actually still use a system, but it'll roll over to our fiber that's being laid right now here, and it won't be a phone line. It'll be internet based.
Isn't ours internet based now?
The system is internet based, but we have 2 T1 PRIs. And then here we have 42 phone lines that provide our phone calls at this time. I think we'll eventually see that we can get rid of those and put it through our infrastructure. Now that might mean a bandwidth increase, you know, at the time, but I still think that would be more cost effective than what we're paying on PRIs.
And you just have to look at the cost of bandwidth versus.
And there will become a price point there where it will be to our advantage to do that. I don't think it is at this time. But yes, that's a good thought though. But yeah, when you go to the internet,
district-wide.
it's district-wide now with our phone lines. But yeah, it wouldn't change the end user experience at all.
So how much do we pay in phone service here?
I think it's one time around 100, but it's come down. We've renegotiated our PRIs and so, you know.
A portion of that is rateable, so you do get about 55 to 60% back.
Yeah.
Now that's going away though in the next couple of years.
That's going to change. But hopefully we get some savings.
That's your job to come up with.
Yes, I'll work on that. So outside of those 2 areas in our infrastructure, I feel our infrastructure is fairly strong with the core upgrades we did last year. So moving into the end user, the elementary areas, visiting with administrators and stuff, and asking what they would like to see in their buildings, and see how they would like to operate the technology. We have at the elementary school, HES, she has 3 to 4 Chromebooks in each classroom. She would like to see a couple more of those go in each classroom, so they have a class set of 5. That's about 24 Chromebooks, you know, and so, and then she would also like to see us go with Chromebooks in that lab. They have a lab right now of the thin clients, which I'm trying to get rid of the last few of them. Because if I don't, that sand, if I back up, if we don't get rid of 100 thin clients that we have left in our district, that sand actually could run about $80,000 just because of the capacity that we need. That was what Ryan was talking about. You know, so looking at those would be actually cheaper for us to buy the Chromebooks and get rid of the old technology and reduce $80,000 on our sand and do that, and we would probably save around $25,000.
How many buildings do we have those in?
What's that?
Then clients.
They're in our elementaries. Yeah, I mean they're in 3rd grade and they're in the labs of the elementaries and they're in UCC classrooms. So we have 109 of them. But anyway, Chromebooks for the classrooms and the Chromebook lab at the elementary. And McEwen, instead of going into the classroom with Chromebooks, he would like to have a cart, a full-size cart, so he can wheel it into the classroom and serve the whole class at one time.
So how many would that?
That'd be 26.
26.
And then again, replace those Chromebooks in that lab with Chromebooks. Or I'm sorry, the thin clients from the lab with the Chromebooks.
Is there,
So those would be those 2 weeks for that.
is it possible to get a cart that has a better system of plugging those in, of charging them, trying to get
You know
all those
what?
wires to the
I
back.
think I'm gonna retire and build a cart because there's not.
They really are sad.
They're clunky.
Yeah, and it's very time consuming to get that done.
So serious.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. But anyway, and then I've got a couple carts in there, you know, just to look at. I mean, that's what I'm requesting there.
Now, these are all wishes from the principals, correct?
These are all wishes from the
And I
principals.
commend you for actually talking to them to get their wishes.
Thank you. And then middle school, Chris actually wants the world, but we agreed to look at 2 Chromebook carts there. And those would be movable carts. He has 4 in his class in his building right now, 4, and they're about 26 per cart. So what he wants, they just and actually he's not looking at that just because he wants 2 more. Every administrator, we talked about these based off of their needs. And with the state testing moving at the elementary schools and the middle school, this is how they're going to take the test. Right now, we're stretching that state testing out a little over a week. If we did this technology, we would do it in 3 days, which takes less cost time than most types of things.
How practical would it be to take the carts, like let's say when HES is doing their testing, to take the carts from McEwen and HMS for the day, let them get their testing
We can
done
do
and
that.
move them to the
We
next.
can do that, but me and my staff have to touch each one of those to do that because the tests are registered to a building. And so when you put the application on the Chromebook, they're registered to that site. So we have to unregister and then register it back. It'd take us about half a day to do that. But we actually thought about that. And then they decided to stretch it instead of do that. But,
I think it's a great idea that we have the same type of computer in the classroom and in the lab, so the kids have some
Agreed.
consistency and are not
Agreed.
constantly.
The only difference I would do in the labs is I'd make it a little bit larger monitor since it's stationary. Yeah, because they do some different things in there than they do in the classroom. ECC, she really just requesting 4 tablets. And that would be for their preschool area. They do have 3 tablets, no, I'm sorry, 2 tablets in each kindergarten classroom. I would recommend 1 more in one of those classrooms, or some sort of an interactive device with a touch screen for them. And then the last areas that the principals didn't touch on this, but it's more a need of old technology, and that's our libraries. Our libraries right now, they have the oldest technology in our district, and so what I'd like to do is a couple of things. Pick that old technology up and put Chromebooks in the elementaries and the middle school. And I've talked to the librarians and they're on board with this. And for a couple of reasons they're on board. 1, they get new technology, and 2, it becomes a mobile technology. So it allows them to redesign their libraries a little bit and allow them to hand those laptops out to the kids and let them go somewhere and sit in a chair and do the research and development.
How many per building?
Middle school would be 12 and the 2 elementaries would be 10 each. So when I talked about the Chromebooks and the carts and the libraries and the tablets, when I look at that price tag is $65,000. And that's a hard number.
And that is for all of those.
That's for all of that.
That was
65,000. Actually, 65,300. That's a hard number.
So there's desktops in the libraries right now, is
Yeah.
that what it is, but they're not slim
And
phone?
they're selling their own websites. And so they
You have to add that one.
So, outside of that, the last thing, the only other thing that I really want to talk about is the instructional technology piece. It is, I think, in my personal opinion, a very vital place, a piece to have, for a couple of reasons. We just talked about a whole bunch of technologies here, and we talked about and approved a lot of technology last year and the year before. In my opinion, if we don't have somebody constantly in front of our staff trying to push them and help them and train them, we shouldn't be letting this. Because we're not doing our kids any justice because one other thing that I've heard from our groups are the kids are coming home and saying, some kids now, when you hear this, it's usually a handful, but they're coming home and they're saying, this such class here, we really struggle with it because we have an assignment and our teacher's struggling learning this too. Okay, and that's, I think, a vital piece to our instructional side, our professional development, ongoing development of that teacher. And so I'd like to see us consider, continuing that position in some form or fashion.
Is it better to have one director, or is it better to train as an additional stipend to maybe someone in the building to take that job over where they are on site there within the building?
I've actually had that scenario in my technology both ways. I've had it where it's a district person, and I've also had it where we've had people in the building.
Because I can see that the need is right there, and if you have a person in the building, they can take care of it.
I can see an advantage of having it right there. I can also see a disadvantage of having it right there because let's say we do a teacher and it's you, and we release you 2 hours out of the day of non-instruction so you can be that person. That means you can only do it 6th and 7th hour. Well, if your plan period's first hour all the time, you can't really get with them. And I noticed when I was doing that with my technology staff, I had a middle school or an elementary to secondary person that kind of did the role, and they were in the buildings. Well, they were getting called out of their classrooms for a while until we stopped that. Because hey, I'll watch your kids. You go take care of that technology. And so we have to be very careful about how we structure that and how we look at that.
I think the difference is when you have tech people going around taking care of the ticket items, the problem areas, whereas we're talking about being able to use different programs, etc. You learn those, you use those on your PD days, and then when you need additional help, then you've got someone there to do the upgrading.
And we actually
which makes
do that
more
now.
sense.
We actually do that now. Even though Ivy is a district person, she might be at a certain building on a PD day, but other buildings are actually holding technology stuff by their staff. And McEwen does that a lot, and the high school has done that a lot, where they approach it with teacher too. So
well, and the difference is too, we didn't have the devices prior to this, but now that we have them, and we have PD days and PD money for people to go and get training, then you learn the technology for your grade level.
Right.
And that makes a lot more sense to do it that way, and I think if we could do it building-wide that way.
I guess my only question is, would that individual fall under your jurisdiction in the tech department?
Well, it's been under mine before, and then it's also been under the person. If it was under mine, I would do it a little different. That's why I said in some form or fashion. If it was a district person under mine, they would understand and know all that software because they would install it, and then they would also support it.
So your suggestion is keep it within your department?
I could work with either one, but I would suggest that. But I could work with either one. That's fine. We're working well now with Ivy. She spends an awful lot of time in our area, and we're going through those scenarios with the software and stuff now. So
One thing we're having the district line is that there will be a continuity between the buildings with the technology, and that person then knows what's going on in this first school, and can carry that over to the next school, and be a liaison between different buildings and the different staff members. That's not saying that sort of each school couldn't be one person, but if we had that person who was over that will be an asset to our staff.
I agree. The last thing is projectors. Projectors, I didn't talk about that when we did that. We did that. I was trying to think of the name of that money that we got.
Zero money. We use zero money for it.
It was a in the surplus, they gave out money.
It was 0 month.
Okay.
We cover reinvestment.
Yeah, we did a lot of our projectors back then. That was, again, the last year Dr. White was here. So you can tell how old our projectors are, and they're dying. So we've been replacing some through my budget. But we do have to come up with a plan on that. And one scenario is with the devices at the high school, the one-to-one scenario. I've been looking at a software piece that allows the teacher to project the image on one-to-many. You know, so a classroom set. You guys, if you're my students, you would see my desktop, and it would eliminate that. I consider that old technology. And, you know, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at a scenario to take care of our high school, and in return, we would increase our surplus downstairs with about 50 projectors, and out of the 50, let's say 85% of them are still working fairly nice. We have a surplus that we can support until we come through with some money and look at a plan to be able to do the rest of the districts in some form or fashion. I'm not sure what that is. A lot of schools are looking at televisions now, like 55 or 60 inch TVs. They last 10 to 12 years. So the break point in the process.
Well, we have the smart boards, and can't you throw it on that?
That's a projector though.
Well, the ET, but can't you work it without that?
No.
You have to.
You have to be able to see it that way. So my best scenario is looking at new technology instead of looking at how we fix the old technology. And the new technology is software driven. So that's what I'm looking at now. So you'll see that, and you'll hear that a little bit farther now too. That's what I've got. Do you guys have any questions? Great. If not,
I guess I would like to see, since we're running on some 7-year cycles,
yes.
I would certainly like to see a plan from you to improve from 7 years to 5 years. Because I think it costs the district additional money to keep that on 7 years.
It does. And those 4 years of gap in our no budget increase in those accidents, that killed our refresher.
Yeah.
We would not probably be sitting here today talking about these things if we wouldn't have had that.
So I guess go through our system, would be my suggestion, and tell us when that should be replaced, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, and ultimately we hope to save money. If we would do some upgrading within those systems.
Yep. All right. Anything else?
Just make sure it
Thank
has
you.
everything on there.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Veneri. We appreciate all the work you've done.
One of the requests I had from the board was to get the Learning Without Limits overall cost to you. And when we talk about Learning Without Limits, it's not the devices. The devices are part of it, but it's the entire movement as a district technology forward that we did. I know David spoke about some of that with infrastructure upgrades at the high school. He spoke about that, some of that with our technology integration specialist, and those are all part of the expenses. And what you have in front of you in the table, and it says at the top, the costs are not and have not been incurred in 1 year, but over several years, both leading up to the one-to-one purchase and some ongoing costs. Some of these costs would have been necessary no matter which device was chosen, or if we even chose a device at all. However, some costs are specific to the device. Those items that would have been necessary with any device are highlighted in yellow. So as we look through that, and I'll cover those first, covers, we would have had covers on any device that we had. That cost over 4 years, beginning in 15 through 18, is about $32,000. Professional training for our staff. Also, no matter what we did, we were going to have to expend something to train our staff, and that's $8,500 that we incurred this past year. As David spoke about, the upgrade to the wireless infrastructure, the lease at the high school, total cost of $342,000, and next year is the last year of that lease, with the yearly cost of $85,500.
So would that go up?
No, after we have paid for this in 16, we now own that equipment, and beginning budget year FY17, we'll no longer have that lease cost. Now, as we talk about end of life, there will be a period of time when we need to look at that again, but we will
So
be.
you're on a 4 year, it's on 4 years, so how much longer will it last, I guess?
I probably would not recommend even looking at those for 6 years.
Okay.
A 6-year-old device on Switch.
That piece, we had to pay for that to be installed as well. There's a $13,000 cost with that. The insurance on the devices costs us around $12,000 per year over 4 years, which we've been. Now, the SmartNet insurance, David, is that on the wireless itself?
It's on the core and the core wireless. It's not on the access point itself.
Okay. So again, we will pay for that, and that's a total of $48,000. Technology integration specialist, I know David spoke about. If we take that individual's salary over and out through 4 years, which is the cost of our devices, how long that lease would take to be paid off, it's $217,000. And then MoreNet, which was just upgrading our pipeline from 150 meg to 250. That's a cost we've been incurring already. And quite honestly, with this upgrade of the fiber coming in, that cost is probably going to actually decrease from what you see on here. But that's about $45,000 a year. Out through 2018, total cost will be about $224,000. Now, the costs that are actually associated with the device. So, first, the costs that are just, no matter what we did, so the total for the items, regardless of the device, you see down below, are about $886,000. Again, those timelines run differently on each one of those. For the MacBook Air laptops that we chose, $11,000 in cost was last year's budget, just for the pilot piece of that. Beginning this year, we started paying for the student MacBook Airs a lease amount of $237,000 per year. Total cost is $949,250 approximately. The engraving of those devices, total cost is around $2,000 to have them engraved if they're property of Harrisonville School District. And then finally, the principals and directors, obviously theirs were upgraded to MacBook Airs as well. That was a cost of last year's budget for just under $14,000. So the total for MacBook Airs, the device that was chosen, that cost is just over the 4-year period of time is just over $1 million. Total cost at this point in time for Learning Without Limits, our entire CSIP goal moving in that direction, by 2018 will be $1.95 million.
Now, is there any other additional costs that we know that are going to come into this with the, within the 4-year plan? Is there any other additional cost, or maybe David can address that?
Well, and David and I talked about this.
Is this a hard number?
This is the best number that we have moving forward that we know. There's nothing that David can think of, Kathy can think of, or myself that is not included within this. Now, that's not to say something won't come up in a year or two that we never could have envisioned, and we're trying to take the best advice we can get from those who have devices. But I don't, and David, tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, I don't see anything in addition to.
I would agree.
Are these devices going to be collected at the end of the school year?
Yes.
Or, okay.
So what is the incoming class? Do we know, do we have to buy some more devices? Do we have enough devices to cover the incoming class?
We have enough devices to cover the incoming class, and as I understand it, the seniors who are graduating, those will be the devices for the freshmen coming in.
That's correct.
Is there any option for those seniors to buy that at the?
We've not offered that at all, because what happens at the end of this lease, we can then purchase them from Apple for $1 a piece. So life effectively on the Apple product is a little bit longer. And David, I think we could go a couple years past this lease and use the same device also.
Or if we wanted to leverage the fair market value of those devices and have them, we can leverage that for the purchase of a new device in 4 years, or 5 years.
3 years from now.
Yeah.
And all the way through the upgrading every year, so there should be.
Well,
Any other
Dr.
questions on that?
Now, how kind of refresh maybe senior moment. So the first lease was taken out of our general account to pay for this. Going to refresh me on that. Is that
Well, and we will talk about that when I talk about, it's actually Fund 4 is where all leases come out of. And we'll talk
Fund
about
4
that.
again
Is capital projects.
Okay.
And we will talk about that. That's one of the next items on it.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan and David and Kathy for doing this work for us. It's very well put together. We appreciate it.
Next item is, I want to talk about a little budget history where we've been over the last 5 years. And the purpose of tonight is not to discuss next year's budget. We just need to get, I want all you to have a very good idea of where we think we're going to finish up this fiscal year. I honestly believe it is far too early to start making predictions as to what the state legislature is going to do. Those predictions would probably be a lot better come late April when we have a better idea of what's actually happening on the state budget side. I've got preliminary information, but I think it's far too soon because that could change in a heartbeat, and I don't think we should plan based upon that. So that's why I don't think at this point in time we'll be talking about next year, but I want you to know where we think we're going to end up at the end of this fiscal year as well. So next handout I have for you is Fund 1 and Fund 2. Fund 1 is called the general fund, often called the unrestricted fund, because anything in fund that comes in, revenue comes into Fund 1, you can use for anything. Fund 2 is the teacher's fund. So basically all of your certified salaries and benefits, all those pieces are paid out of Fund 2. So as you look at that, we will first talk about Fund 1, and I want to give you some comparisons under some of the large items to what we're getting revenue-wise this fiscal year compared to what we were actually getting in 2009 and 2010. So, for instance, if you look about a third of the way down the page, you see number 59 or 5199, which is the local subtotal for our local revenue. In the 2009-10 school year, we got $8.8 million. This year, we're projected to get $8.7 million. Now, please remember, what drives that is our assessed value. And our assessed value as of this year is about probably just a little bit less than it was in 2009-10. So that's our property tax rate that's driven by our assessed value. Our assessed value went up 1.79% this year to just over $181 million. We've been running 180, 179 for the last several years. So based on the taxes that we're levying on the public, that's the money that we're actually getting in. It's about $8.7 million currently is our projection. We budgeted about $8.65 million, so we're just a little bit over that. The next yellow line there you'll see is the county subtotal. So, and there's really only one line under that. There's our railroad utilities that come in from the county. Now that has gone up drastically from 09-10, where we got $275,000. We're now getting $569,000. But that hasn't increased drastically. It's been a relatively slow climb over the past 6 years to get us to that point. I did want to point out one piece under here, which is 5381. It's called the high need fund. It's 2 above the yellow line towards the bottom on the left-hand side. One of the things that our current special education director has been very good at doing is getting more returns for us in the high needs fund. The high needs fund is anytime there's a student in special education whose cost to educate that individual student is more than 3 times our average cost to educate a student, we turn that amount over to the federal government, and a year later they reimburse us for that. So if you will look at that, you'll see that we have increased based on the years, somewhere from, we were $219,000 several years ago in 09, and we're currently we'll probably be over $300,000 in reimbursement based on last year's expenditures within the special education.
Now, wasn't that anticipated when we decided to quit sending them to other schools and keeping them here?
Well, part of that is, but it's actually since increased since then. I think it's the job she's done reporting those expenses that has actually included that. So the big drop that you see, down at 219, it was 07 when we put those It was the 07 bond issue that we used to put in those classrooms and those spaces where we brought students back in, the high need students. So part of that's anticipated, but at the same time, we've drastically gone up over the last 2-3 years.
And it looks like that fluctuated quite a bit there.
Well, it depends greatly on the student.
So that would not be something we want to rely on.
No, it's not reliable. I was just pointing out that it's something that we've really tried to focus on to get our reimbursement back.
Dr. Ryan, I see on Student Activities Fund, we went from a high of 2009 to 2010. We went from a high of 567, we might as well say 568,000. Now we're down to 490,000. We've dropped about $80,000 in student activities. So tell me what Student Activities Fund is.
Mrs. Mangel.
Okay, those are the clubs and the different activity accounts at the high school or in alternates. And it just depends on what kind of fundraisers they do for the year. It's just dependent upon what monies those clubs and those activities are raising. So it's very unpredictable.
And that's revolving in that, you know, if the FBLA has $2,000 in their account at the end of this year, beginning next year they have $2,000 in their account. It's not an ending budget.
Now, is that in any type of interest-bearing account so they can gain more?
Everything we have is interest-bearing, and we will show interest later under the income, which you're going to see a drastic drop in that. That's really based on interest rates. We've moved more into an environment where putting your money somewhere where it doesn't lose is safer than that.
But I see in state assessed utilities, we're up, you know, 250,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a lot, basically the pipeline, those are utilities. So in the pipeline, this year we also saw a disputed amount come in about $45,000. So that is why it increased this year as well. But the pipeline really raised the amount in the last few years.
Another thing on the high need fund, those were probably the years that they were lower. We had a part-time director, so we only had somebody half-time.
Less than half time.
Less than half-time, and now that's one advantage of having the full-time person.
And then on the next page, and there's many things that go into this. It's title funds, it's Part B IDEA, which is our special education funding from the federal government as well. School lunch reimbursement, school breakfast reimbursement. All of those pieces under the federal are about $723,000 per year that we receive currently, and that's down, although it's fluctuated, it's down from just under $800,000 back in 2009. So it still remains a small portion of our budget when you look at percentages, certainly less than 10%. So, and then total revenues in Fund 1 are $10.9 million is what we're anticipating to get at the end of this year. We only budgeted 10.8, so it's over what we budgeted, which is good. But if you look at 2009, we got 10.8. So very similar over the last 6 years. Fund 2, often called the Teachers Fund, is primarily our state funding. There's three sources of that. It's Prop C. Prop C is sales tax revenue, and we're going to receive about $2.2 million in that this year. 6 years ago it was $1.9 million. It's gone up slightly over time. Another one that is obviously the other piece that's really big is the basic formula. We always hear about the formula that's out there. Under basic formula state monies in 2009 we received $7.1 million. We are actually projecting that we're going to receive $7.9 million in that this year, which is about $75,000 more than we actually we budgeted for. So again, we're going to see more than we actually thought we would. And the last piece for state funding, the major piece is called the Classroom Trust Fund. That is gambling money that comes through lottery tickets and riverboats and those kind of pieces. I think it's a very difficult piece to base budgets on because it all means how much money people lost on the boats. However, we currently this year we budgeted $915,000, and that has fluctuated anywhere from 2009 just under $900,000 to just over $900,000 at this point. So that's the other major state funding source. And then finally, if you look at the last page, our total Fund 2 revenues are about 13. This year we project to be about 13.6 million. We budgeted 13.5. But 6 years ago, we received $13.9 million in state funding.
We'll get a hard number on
For this year, quite honestly, the best number we're going to get,
it. Right here.
no, the best number we're going to get on where we're going to end up and be for next year is probably going to be the first week in May, when the state legislature, the second Friday in May, when they finish their session. Because what happens is they will tell us under formula monies and other pieces, we're going to get so much through the year. Well, then there's withholdings, and then so certain months you can't depend on it. Then they think there's going to be more, so they add in payments other months. So it is a projection. I mean, we can't give a solid number on it until we actually get to a June 21st payment, and we have a good idea what we actually got in the fiscal year 15.
And Joe probably remembers the year that they withheld the May payment, which is really painful because you've already expended it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's why you don't know until you get your check.
The last page is expenditures. Again, this is Fund 1 and Fund 2, and I'm just going to point out the main items under our expenditures. We've got expenditures broken down to salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, and equipment, which we don't have anything equipment. The grand total on expenditures in Fund 1 in 2009 was $10 million. We had actually budgeted about the same amount this year, just over $10 million in that. We are projected to actually not spend that. We're going to spend $9.97 million in Fund 1. Fund 2, which is salaries, employee benefits, purchase services also. Again, that is the teacher's fund, is what it's typically called. We are anticipating at the end of this year that we're going to receive about spend about $14.89 million. We budgeted over 15.2. But if we look 6 years in the past, we spent $14.4 million in that fund. So we're not spending that much more in the teacher's fund than we were at that point in time.